のラブリッチェ。
Saturday. Clubs buckled down hard on our days off and students would spend every waking hour at practice. Or rather, that only held true for extremely blessed clubs at some sports-oriented schools.
グラウンドあと10周です。声を出していきますよ。武道場が柔道部の日だから基礎体力のしかできないから。
Most clubs could not claim space, so everyone ended up killing time with super basic cardio exercises. Unable to get their hands on swords for the day, the fencing club focused purely on tedious exercise. Which is why I ran away.
いらっしゃい。
Sylvie had come to the school on her day off as well.
クリスマスに演奏会があるから、それまでに指を鳴らしておこうと思ってね。自由な時間が取れてよかったな。自由に演奏できる時間ってあまり取れないから。
A recital, huh? A celebrity like Sylvie would definitely have a schedule jam-packed with special events over the holiday season. Christmas and whatnot sounded hectic. Are the pieces so difficult that you need to put in the extra practice?
本当よ。子供でも弾けるわ。でも練習は大事なの。指に覚え込ませないと。楽譜を追うような演奏じゃいい音が出ないわ。
This whole conversation was completely over my head. As Sylvie read her sheet music.
それで10日と少しになるわね。エルと恋人をしてもらうことになって。
Yeah. It felt like more time had passed, but it had only been 10 days since we started quote-unquote dating.
どう？エルは結婚したくなった？
I'm pretty sure that was never the deal.
だったわね。でも2人私が思った以上に仲良くなっているわよね。
Well, even if you set aside how Sylvie had instigated us into having our dinners together, we developed close enough of a relationship to lend her my shower and for me to casually help dry her hair. Not to mention how she had stayed overnight, even if it was an accident.
作戦が成功したかはともかく、なんだか楽しいことになりそうね。
Mission?
なんでもないわ。
Sylvie grinned, clearly acting like her tongue had slipped. Give me a break here. I thought it was weird how pushy you were being to propose all of this in the first place. Do you seriously have some ulterior motive?
怒らないで。エルのためになることだし、オーラに何かしようということではないの。本当よ。
What a mess. Putting Sylvie's schemes aside, it didn't change to the fact that dating Elle was nothing but a huge perk for me, still. So, what's this mission of yours?
シルビー様、来てらっしゃったのですか？ああ、エル。一言お声かけください。気づかないところでした。
It looked like they had come to school separately and Elle looked rather panicked.
うわあ、オーラ！
Yes, hello. She must not have noticed me until then either.
なぜオーラが姫様と一緒に？監禁、脅迫、調教。
Her?
いえ、疲れているようです。練習は休憩？ならちょっと3人でいましょうか。はい。
Am I being invited to another one of your concerts? Miss Musician, please set the mood with some background music.
はーい。
Sylvie giggled and let her fingers slide across the keys. Maybe my phrasing had been a little rude just now. Although Elle looked exasperated by my request, she remained silent. If I had made that kind of comment when we first met, she surely would have scolded me. How dare you speak to the princess that way? We were close enough now that I could get away with jokes, as Sylvie jovially ran a finger across the keys.
それでル、フェンシング、出来はどうなの？
はい、上々です。試合でもなかなかに良い成績を残せそうです。最近ちょっと集中力を欠いていますが。
さあ、試合まであと2週間。それまで目いっぱい打ち込んでちょうだい。
はい、学校生活の良い思い出になります。
Huh? I noticed Sylvie's expression suddenly went stiff. I really shouldn't have been surprised that the brief lapse in emotion hadn't impacted her musical performance, but now that I'd seen it firsthand, it was clear to me how displeased Sylvie was by Elle's comment.
思い出にするのは早いんじゃないかしら。来年だってあるでしょ。
自分は競技者としては3年生でのエントリーですので、来年は引退を余儀なくされます。
そっか。でもならスポーツとして続けるなりなんなり。国に戻ってからも続けていいのよ。うちの国はスポーツがあまり強くないから、国際競技の選手は多い方がありがたいわ。
それはできません。
どうして？
国に戻れば私は一階の騎士、シルビア様に常にお仕えする従者の一人です。趣味にかまけている暇はありません。
フェンシングそんなに好きなのに？
仕方のないことです。
そう。
It was on that note that Sylvie went silent and focused on her performance. What was it? The timbre hadn't changed whatsoever. Yet the tone of her notes felt like they had turned icy.
カバレロ様、どこですか？
はーい。シルビー様、失礼します。
We saw Elle off as she headed back to club. Now then, you want Elle to continue fencing, but it sounds like she's got other plans. Does this have anything to do with the mission you mentioned earlier?
オーラは鋭いから好きよ。
Her fingers stopped. When her performance ended, everything became crystal clear to me when I saw the furious look on her face. Elle's comment had really pissed her off. What a rarity! Someone as absent-minded as Sylvie could make a face like that. Everyone is entitled to make their own life choices, especially if they want to keep practicing or not.
本人にあんなに才能があっても？
Talent isn't the issue, but rather how the person feels.
その気持ちでも続けたいと思っていても？
That certainly would complicate things, yes. The way I saw it, I didn't believe that Elle wanted to quit fencing either. It was obvious Elle loved to compete and how much she desperately wanted to continue fencing.
エルはね、いつだってああなの。シルビー様のため、シルビア王女のため、自分の人生を私のためだけに使ってる。あのこと、まだ気にしてるのね。
She whispered that last part too quietly for me to make out.
そこで立てたのが今回の作戦なの。名付けてエルが大好きなフェンシングを続けたくなるよう位置に全部任せちゃおう作戦よ。
What a great, easy to follow mission name. It's not a mission, but a complete delegation.
我ながら惚れ惚れとするほど自然な流れでフェンシングの練習に赴くエルに自然とオーロが会いに行くよう仕向けたわ。
I'd argue that a princess forcing us to get married spur of the moment is hardly natural, but I do get your point.
あとはオーロに任せておけばエルもフェンシングの楽しさが身に染みて分かって続けていきたいと思うようになると思うの。どうかしら。
That's why I'm telling you this is delegation. I knew what her mission or whatever was now, but she was telling me to change Elle's sentiments toward fencing, or put in a grandiose way, her way of life. There were limits to how absurd your requests could get. Just to put this out there, if you're insisting I persuade her, that's out of the question. If I were to tell Elle, you should prioritize fencing over Sylvie, then she'd probably get angry at me. We finally had a friendly atmosphere between us, and I didn't want to screw that up. Most importantly of all, if she wanted to quit the sport, then it would be best for her if she followed through. Forcing yourself to keep playing a sport just because other people told you to would be foolish. Also I thought, but Sylvie flashed me a soft smile and said,
説得なんてしなくていいわ。オーロはただエルのそばにいてくれれば。
Huh?
作戦は順調に進行中よ。
What did she mean? Sylvie giggled at me as I tilted my head in confusion.
オーロがそばにいれば、エルはこれから先もっともっとフェンシングが楽しくなると思うな。そうしてフェンシングを今以上に大好きにさせるのが私の作戦。あとは良きところでもうちょっと続けなさいって命令するだけよ。現時点じゃまだ無理みたいだけど、今より大好きになったらエルだって悪い気せず続ける気になるでしょ。
Ah. This sounded relatively passive for something she had called a mission. Would a strategy like that pan out? I had my doubts.
完璧な作戦よ。オーラがそばにいればどんなことでも楽しくて仕方なくなっちゃうはずだもの。
In Sylvie's mind, it was an open and shut case. I hadn't realized just how much people relied on me. I stuck around at the academy even after Sylvie had gone home. This plan of Sylvie's. Setting aside whether it would work out or not, I had no reason to fight her on it. In truth, I was happy that Elle and I had gotten closer as a result. However, it did bug me a little to know that I had been played. What bugged me worse, though, was Sylvie and Elle's relationship. How could I describe it? This development had really reinforced something I'd sensed before. For whatever reason, they were somewhat reserved around one another. It wasn't like they had a poor relationship, they were incredibly close actually. Although Elle had sworn absolute unwavering loyalty to her, Sylvie's affections for Elle were far greater. In spite of those feelings, there was clearly a rift between them. It felt like they were overly mindful of that gap and were keeping a calculated distance from one another. Why? I knew it wasn't my place, but I was worried all the same.
ねえ、ちょっと君。
Yes. When suddenly a man spoke to me. Who was he? It was an older man with a friendly smile. I didn't recognize him. But I did notice something.
ちょっと聞きたいんだけど、いいかな？
He called out and beckoned me over. He was outside the school gates and made absolutely no attempt to come inside. That was when it occurred to me. Oh, he came here on a job. What is it? I couldn't ignore him, and that was my way home. No other choice but to pop over.
いやー、怪しいものじゃないんだけどね。君、市松大路くんだよね。
He knew my name. He must have done his research and read up on me. Namely, the hot topic currently circulating online, Heroina-san's boyfriend.
いやー、ノーブル学園ってすごいね。ここに来るまででもドキドキしちゃったよ。僕の通ってた学校は昔ながらのオンボロ校舎だったから。
Right. He was beating around the bush and really playing it by the book. Maybe I should go straight for the kill? If you're here to talk about Elle, then I've got nothing to say to you. Sortilege has me bound to secrecy. I may have jumped the gun a little, but I played the "this is an international issue" card. I didn't know who this guy was. I wasn't sure why he was here, but at least he wasn't snapping candid photos of me while we spoke. What's more, he hadn't come onto school grounds, he was avoiding trespassing. That should mean he wouldn't pick any fights with royalty.
ああ、そうかい。ひょっとして僕の前にも誰かにしつこくされたとか？いや、誤解されちゃってるね。君やカバリエロさんに迷惑かけたいわけじゃないのに。
I'll take your word for it. So what is this then? An interview or part of a gossip column?
本当なら取材費もちゃんと用意してきたんだけど。
Well then, please hand me that interview fee. Once you do, let my contacts at Sortilège know I accepted an interview.
あー肝が据わってるね君。おじさんも家庭があるし、世間話ってことでどうかなね。
He wasn't backing down, huh? Not only was he persistent, but the fact he had an interview budget at all meant he was in the business. With that in mind, I'd like some information of my own. The pretend lover strategy Sylvie had devised worked wonders with addressing the candid photos, but it was a double-edged sword that supplied weekly magazines and other legitimate media with tantalizing material. If only it could keep them at bay until the day of the competition, or so I had hoped, but that had apparently been naive of me. Unfortunate. The next thing I needed to consider was the company he worked for. If it was just this one guy, then I could probably sidestep him entirely. But if several news outlets and agencies began poking their noses into this, then we'd have more to worry about than just candid photos. Regardless, I could just inform Sylvie and let it become Sortilège's problem.
いくつか聞きたいことがあるんだ。まず君がカバリエロさんの。
If this is small talk, then you can mark me down as no comment for everything.
どうして？もしかして答えにくいこととか？
This person who came to me under the guise of an interview presumed to be too difficult to work with following their first question. Sound about right?
ああ、待って待って。君怖い子だな。
He soon realized how unapproachable I was, but the smirk never left his face. Now was the time. Alright, which publisher do you work for?
ん？え？どうして？
Well, aren't you supposed to start by introducing yourself in these situations? You haven't mentioned any names at all. I went in for the second kill. I didn't especially care who he worked for, as it wouldn't make him any less of a nuisance. I'd lulled him into a false sense of security in thinking this interview would go off without a hitch, and had broken the ice by requesting his credentials. If he had any guilty conscience to speak of, this would be the part where he made a break for it, if he were actually to stick around.
商談者だよ。センテンススプリングって雑誌知ってる？あそこの人間。はいこれ。
He naturally handed me his business card. So he didn't have any guilty conscience. His card listed the name Komiya Eisuke. An alias? Nah, maybe I was being paranoid.
じゃあ、これ以上は怖いから今日はこの辺で。
Huh? You're leaving already?
それだけ受け取ってくれれば十分だから。
Oh. He left after handing me his business card. Ah. Damn it, he tricked me.
どうしたのですオーロ。
Oh, I guess I wasn't really tricked, but it kinda feels that way. Still, I couldn't very well ignore the feeling in my gut. He had read me and the conversation like a book. I was actively on alert when I approached him, yet I had only learned what they wanted me to know about them. Or rather, they had only told me their assumptions. He had wrapped up all introductions after he handed over his card. It would be tough to ignore him the next time he came around. He had effectively formed a connection with me and Elle.
週刊誌の記者が接近ですか。騎士員の方から出版社に断りを入れましょうか。
Is that possible? He just came by to introduce himself and hadn't arranged for an official interview.
ええ、現時点は声をかけられた程度、講義を入れられる段にありませんが。オーロは学生です。しかもノーブル学園に通う。圧力をかける程度なら十分ですよ。
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Throwing Noble Academy's name around really helped in times like these, huh?
ただ、やはり現時点では講義をかけるにはぬるい。あまり過敏に反応すると、こちらから焚きつけることにもなりかねませんね。
You mean an oversensitive response would suggest there's something you don't want them to find out?
ええ。 そうなると現在は出版社1社だけですが、他の会社まで呼びかねません。
I'd like to avoid that. If we kicked up a fuss now, it would likely cause a much larger commotion. I could tell just how massive of a nuisance the media could be. So we shouldn't ruffle any feathers yet, right? The guy who came around last seemed sensible, at least. I could probably get through to him now that I'd mentioned Sortilege's name. I desperately wanted to avoid doing anything to attract the paparazzi, namely those who would do anything for a story to make international headlines. I could just ignore them next time.
ですね。
Yeah. He was a pretty clever reporter, so I was a little worried he might try and pull a fast one on me next time. To be blunt, I wasn't all that bright. He might extract information from me through idle conversation, and I wouldn't realize it in time. Some sort of information. Oh yeah, before all of that,
何です？
if I were to accept this interview, how would I explain myself? Before I should worry about having information drawn out of me, what information would they even take? Who was I to Elle and to Sortilege as a whole? It was a little late now, but I just realized how trivial my presence was. So first off, I am Sylvie's friend.
そうですね。
This was the official setup we had reported to the police and public security when we first met. So if any of those details got back to the weekly magazines, it shouldn't result in a scandal.
シルビー様の幼馴染でいらっしゃるそうですね。それを公式のものとさせてもらいましょう。幼馴染の縁で姫様はあなたをノーブル学園に招いた。
A princess's boyfriend found. You sure that'll be alright?
男性のご友人程度ならば問題ありません。シルビー様はクラスの男子全員とも親しいですし。
If push comes to shove, we can just drag Kikuchio in it with us and have her say, I'm friends with everyone! If nothing else, it wouldn't stir up any drama if my relationship with Sylvie were to go public. Which brought us to... What about us? We aren't engaged, I'd assume.
そうですね。
Then what are we? How close are you and I right now? Suddenly, our faces flushed a bright shade of red. What the heck was I saying? Was that even a question a guy should be asking? I'd put it out there, so there was no turning back now. I couldn't deny that I'd been thinking about it all the time lately too.
私とオーロは
Yeah.
ですね。
I know that we are pretend lovers. Until December 17th, right? Ah, so that meant we only had 10 days left. Everything went by so fast. What would happen to us then? What should we do? We really do need to figure this out. Think about it. We'll be in huge trouble if those magazine reports come sniffing around. We need to know what to do if it's put into an article.
そうですね。困ります。どう答えたものでしょうか。
We both froze up. This conversation quickly veered off into an unexpected direction. Neither of us had really given this particular subject any thought. What was to come of us beyond December 17th? Our time as pretend lovers would soon end, and we wouldn't really need to interact with one another. You could call us lovers if you wanted, but it wasn't anything like that when all she really did was treat me to a homemade meal every night. It's not like we'd cut ties completely, so we were both classmates and close friends at this point. Shedding the title of lovers wouldn't pose any major problems. It wouldn't, but I think I'd like for us to stay this way. Even after the 17th, even if we stop pretending. Actually, I'd really like it if we stopped pretending altogether right here and now. And we become real lovers. I leaned my face toward hers. Elle's eyes widened. Even though she knew what I was after, she didn't run away. Instead, her eyelids slowly drifted shut, and she welcomed me. Our lips joined together. It was our first kiss. Elle's lips were astonishingly soft and squishy to the touch, even though every other word out of her mouth was anything but. I briefly wondered if such fragile lips would break if I put too much force into our kiss, but I didn't back away. Every impact was met with a sweet rebound, with a powerful and almost jelly-like recoil. Simply being pressed against them gave me chills. A kiss. So this is what they were like. Both of us let out a heated sigh. And then, like so, the rift between our lips was closed even more tightly, crushed together by the force behind their impact. Stuck together, it felt more like they had meshed together. It was as if our lips were being absorbed into one another's. I could even feel Elle kissing me back. Whoop. But that was as far as it went. In reality, it had probably been less than a minute, but Elle quickly pulled away. Elle. Ah! She up and left. Huh. It was to be expected. Elle and I did live in different worlds. I may have jumped the gun a little bit. I was telling her the truth, though. I had fallen for Elle a long time ago. Even though Elle and I lived in completely different worlds, I knew that, deep down, I still loved her. And I had no intention of giving up on her. That was a realization I'd made long ago.